Hello everyone. Now with the current lockdown in place, it's basically impossible to get out and do any filming. So what I wanted to do today was a back garden bunny hop challenge. And there are basically two things that I wanted to find out today. The first is exactly how much harder is it to bunny hop an e-bike versus a regular pedal bike. Now we all know that e-bikes are much heavier than regular pedal bikes, but how much does that extra weight impact how high you can bunny hop it? And the second thing I wanted to find out was what kind of difference it makes trying to bunny hop in clipless pedals versus flat pedals. Now if you've ever ridden an e-bike, you'll know that it's really difficult to bunny hop compared to a normal bike. And the reason for this is mostly the extra weight, but it's also the weight distribution that counts. Now on the e-bike, you've obviously got a heavy motor down here, but also a heavy battery coming all the way up the down tube. So that means that the weight balance has shifted so much further forward than on a regular bike. And this makes it that much harder to lift the front wheel. The other thing that makes a difference on an e-bike is that the chainstays tend to be longer because of the bulk of the motor, and also because e-bikes tend to have longer chainstays to help the climbing. So this again moves your weight balance forward and makes it much harder to get the front wheel off the ground. So this is a 22 kilo e-bike. I've got a 12 kilo pedal bike, and then I've also got a lightweight e-bike which is about 18 kilos. So I want to see what kind of difference those weights and weight distributions make to how high I can bunny hop. And then I'm going to swap pedals. I'm going to go from flats to clips and see if I can improve how high I can bunny hop. And to keep it simple, I'm going to raise the bar in 5 centimeter increments, and I'm going to have 3 attempts at each height. So let's see how high I can bunny hop on each of my 3 bikes. So I've finally finished all of my bunny hops and I've retired to the shed to have a look at the results. Now I've come in here partly because there's so much noise outside, there's lawnmowers, kids going. The neighbours definitely think I'm slightly mental now, but it's been an interesting experiment and an exhausting one as well. I'm absolutely knackered after doing all those, God knows how many bunny hops I had to do. Now before I go through all of the results, I just want to have a chat about some of the things that I noticed when I was doing it. Starting off with the analogue bike. Now that is the Mondraker F-Podium I've got, which is sub 12 kilos, so it's a pretty light bike. Now obviously this was really pretty easy to get off the ground. Now timing was very different to the e-bike, so rather than having a more deliberate kind of 2-stage front up, back up kind of technique, it's a much more fluid motion because the front end comes up so much more easily, so you don't have to put so much effort into getting it off the ground. On the e-bike it was interesting because it was easier to accelerate because obviously the motor gives you that kick, but depending on what mode I was in, it would actually mess up the timing completely, because sometimes the motor would continue to spin once I'd stopped pedaling and it would propel me in to the bar, actually like a motor overrun. So rather than coasting or freewheeling, the motor was still propelling me forward. So in the end I dialed it down to eco mode on the turbo Levo to stop this happening. So if I go through the results, so I'll start off with the analogue bike first, and remember this is about 12.5 kilos. With flat pedals I managed to get over 52 centimeters. So on the Turbo Levo SL, which is around 18 kilos, riding with the flat pedals, I managed to get over 45 centimeters. So not actually that far off what I could do on the analog bike with flat pedals. In fact, that was 86% of the maximum I could achieve on the analog bike. Then went on to the Turbo Levo itself. Now this is just under 22 kilos, so it's a big chunk of weight heavier than even that SL. Now I managed to get over 38 centimeters on the Turbo Levo, which is about 70% of what I could achieve with the Podium. So there's a big difference in height there. And it did take a little while to adjust my technique and the timing, as I say, and then also it was more about really getting that hips back, really getting the front of the bike up in the air and over the bar before then trying to get the back wheel up. Conversely, the SL was really easy compared to the Turbo Levo. Like, it was almost as if I was riding the analog bike. And this is something I've noticed riding it on trails as well. There's a direct correlation between how easy it is to bunny hop and how agile it is and how easy it is to maneuver on trails and how, like, get round corners, pop over little gaps and stuff like that. And it's really close to an analog bike in terms of handling, even though it's like 6 kilos heavier. The difference doesn't feel that much when you're riding it. So moving on to clipless pedals, I'll start with the Mondraker F-Podium. So remember, flat pedals, 52 centimeters. Putting the clipless pedals on, I got that up to 56 centimeters. Now, it wasn't a massive difference, so about 7% difference there. And I think that's basically because I'm reaching the maximum of what I can actually achieve, full stop. With flat pedals, clipless, there isn't much difference on the analog bike, simply because that's basically as high as I can go. Now on the Turbo Levo SL, remember, with flat pedals I managed 45 centimeters, so quite close to the analog bike. And with clipless pedals I upped that to 52 centimeters, which is exactly what I did on the analog bike with flat pedals. And that brought me within 90% of what I could achieve full stop. Now the really interesting part of this was the Turbo Levo, the 22 kilos with the 700 watt-hour battery. And this is a full-blown e-bike, remember, and I could only get 38 centimeters on it with flat pedals. This is quite astonishing. Once I fitted clipless pedals to the Turbo Levo, I could get 52 centimeters on it. Now remember, that's identical to the SL with clipless pedals and exactly the same as I could achieve on flat pedals on the analog bike. And that's a whopping 36% increase on what I could achieve on flat pedals with that bike. And that brought me within 90% of my absolute maximum bunny hop height. So that's a clear, massive advantage if you're riding a full-blown e-bike and you're struggling to get it off the ground. Really might be worth trying clipless pedals. It really has a massive advantage. It's not every day you're going to be trying to bunny hop 50 centimeters on your ride off-road, but it directly translates into how much you can move the bike around, how much you can swap it into corners, how much you can gap it over obstacles, and just how kind of in control of the bike you feel. You don't have to put so much energy in trying to pick up the back wheel. So I was really surprised at how much of an advantage clipless pedals made on the e-bike, and I'm definitely going to be running them from now on. Obviously there is a little bit of a trade-off there, because you can't ride clipless pedals quite as loose and as free as you can with flat pedals, and so you do sacrifice a bit of confidence sometimes in off-camber sections and corners, but you just got to learn to maybe back it off in certain situations and then use them to your advantage in others. Hope you found that interesting and given you something to consider if you ride an e-bike a lot and you're struggling with your bunny hops.